Estamos a bordo del Ambar 3, hoy 9 de junio 2024. Estamos en un lugar que se llama El Embudo, aquí en el Parque Nacional de Espíritu Santo. Mike, first of all, thank you for being together again. Many times we've been sharing adventures in the Villagigedo Islands, Socorro Islands, and now in the Sea of Cortez here in this national park. Tell us, because you've been doing this for how many years, and why you started to be part of the Sea of Cortez and the Baja California Sur area.
So, you know, I'll tell you my story, and it's a story that you'll hear over and over again in any fish camp. I got here 51 years ago, and if you talk to any patriarch in a fish camp, they're going to tell you the same story. There were birds everywhere when I got here. There were fish everywhere. There were shoals of sardines in every bay in the Sea of Cortez. And if you talk to the fishermen, the old guys my age, over 80, they'll tell you the same thing, that there were all these things. And those things are gone now. I mean, the declines in the fisheries are tremendous.
How can you say that? I mean, since when you started to see a decline in the inhabitants of...
That's a good question. So, in the 70s, there wasn't much fishing pressure. And the real fishing pressure started when, in the late 70s and early 80s, when the gill nets arrived. And Max Schroyer had made its over 1,000 pongas by 1980. And you could see declines. The main declines I saw were in the 80s. By the 90s, a tremendous amount of the fish populations were gone. The reef as well as the pelagics. When I got here, there was, I mean, you could go out and catch 50 tuna in the spring. This time of year, you go out to El Bajo, it was alive with small tuna. Birds were everywhere. You never thought about having a radar or some way of looking for fish. All you had to do is look at the birds diving.
When you say birds, what the meaning of when the birds are in the environment, in the area?
Yeah, well, if you look around where we are right now, there's no birds. You're not seeing any. The birds were, I mean, tens of thousands of boobies and seagulls and pelicans. When I got here 50 years ago, any bay in Espiritu Santo National Park would have had pelicans at one end of it or another and a small shoal of sardines. Never could you go into a bay without seeing sardines. And you never had to worry about where the fish were to catch, because they were always on the surface, driving bait fish to the surface and eating them, birds diving on them. I mean, sometimes there'd be 20 or 30 schools of fish and birds just in your view. In those days when the fishermen were fishing with sardines, dead sardines, and hand lines, it was nothing. No matter where you were, a fisherman would come in at the end of the day with 100, 200 kilos of fish. Big pargos, big cabrilla. It was unbelievable. And looking at it now, 95% of it's gone. The fish in the ocean, the birds in the sky, they're gone.
So your first approach to the ocean was 50 years ago, say?
Yeah, I got here in 1974 and bought a sailboat, and I sailed the sea for a year. Left for 2 years and went to Hawaii in the sailboat, and all I could think about was getting back to the Sea of Cortez. The most beautiful island complex I saw in the entire Sea of Cortez was Espiritu Santo National Park. It was the fishiest. El Bajo was, you know, was a dream to go fishing out there. So as soon as I could afford it and I got another boat, I came back to La Paz. And I basically never left the sea since. For 50 years, I've been here 8 months a year.
What years were when the famous mantas and the famous hammerhead
70s and 80s.
70s and 80s.
Yep.
80s.
Yeah, if you
stopped to see those big animals.
It was amazing. You know, you could anchor your boat on El Bajo, look down into the water, and just from the surface you'd see 100 hammerhead sharks. And
even Jacques Cousteau had his that was why Cousteau named it the aquarium of the world. No?
Yeah, I think about the time he named it the aquarium of the world, I got here, and I spent months and months in the fish camps, and I spent the first 5 months of my time in the sea at Agua Verde. I'll show you all the pictures later. So my remembrances are that the sea was full of fish and the skies were full of birds, and everywhere you looked there were sardines. There was never a time you didn't see sardines in any bay. If it wasn't sardines, it was anchovies. And that's the same story if you talk to the Cuevas family like you did today. The old timers in the Cuevas family, people my age, are going to tell you the same thing. You know, they're going to tell you the stories of the way it used to be. And that's really all I can do. I can tell you how it used to be, and I can tell you how it is today because I'm still diving and fairly active in the water. It's you know, it's enough to make you cry. What you're seeing now.
It's sad because you should know about the recent trip that expedition from 18 investigators and academic and marine biologists they made from La Paz to Bahía de Los Angeles in north of the Sea of Cortez, well, the north of this half peninsula, and after 1 month and more than 4,000 hours of diving,
they saw not one shark, and they found one. And now they're looking at biodiversity as well as biomass, right? And so they're searching everything on these reef systems. I think there was 78 reef systems involved. I mean, when I got here, they were everywhere. There was one time in Guaymas when a guy flew in his plane from Phoenix. And I watched him do that for a few weekends, and I said, well, how come you come down every weekend? And he said, you want to go out with me? And I said, yes. So we went out and with 2 pangas, and I think there were four or five divers. They got 950 lobsters.
Wow. That
was 1973. And it was for a restaurant in Phoenix. I mean, there was that volume, and to me it seemed like there was an endless supply of fish, and I'm sure to everybody, that every fisherman in the Sea of Cortez initially felt like it was endless.
But, you know, there are many people who say, well, that's happening everywhere, and the Sea of Cortez is not the exception, and here in Espiritu Santo, they say there's a national park since 1918 or something like that, a little less, no?
This national park? 2007.
2007. Well, from 2007 to 2018, the population of the big fish, like the predators, like the sharks and meros and
cabrilla, pargo, they're gone.
Yellowtails, the jureles.
Jureles. Yeah, they're doing the time when they pass through.
And the next level, the pericos or the parrotfish and pargos and cochitos and chopas, they start to maintain or less than that the biomass.
Yeah.
According to the studies of Carlos Sanchez.
It's hugely down. I mean,
University.
Yeah, you know, I'm not a scientist, but I'm in the water all the time, and I'm always looking, and I'm always I was a spear fisherman and a fisherman before I realized that things were so bad that I couldn't take the fish I did before, and it was time for me to help a little bit and see if you couldn't bring Espiritu Santos back. So, Espiritu Santo, excuse me. So, all the things they say, climate change and so on, about why the fisheries levels have dropped, they haven't dropped in Cabo Pumo. You know, thanks to God that there's a Cabo Pumo we can at least look at as an example of if you leave the reefs alone and don't fish them, fish will come back. And so all I say is, you have to. For 47 years, the reefs have been fished every day. They've been fished ever since the advent of the gill nets. They've been fished 24 hours a day. And after 45 years of that, the reefs are in trophic collapse in a lot of areas in the sea, including here in the park. So the only way around that is that people think about it and say, yeah, fish have to have some area where they can reproduce, and some area where they can live in peace and not be hammered by nets, traps, spear guns, sport fishermen every day. And what better place? It's a proven fact that it works in Cabo Pomo. So what better place to at least get a recovery started like Cabo Pomo than Espiritu Santo National Park? And if it can be done there, then it's certainly up to the fishermen to decide what parts of the sea they leave alone to recover and which parts they don't. I have no interest in that. But I know that if you hammer the reefs every day, 24 hours a day for 45 years, they collapse. And the reefs in the Sea of Cortez, the reef fish and the reefs have collapsed.
Let's talk about then causes. What are the causes that this? Because there are many.
Excuse me.
That could be illegal fishing, because there's still illegal fishing according to the fishermen here in the fishing camps around the park.
I can tell you exactly what it is. Overfishing.
Overfishing.
It's not. You can't. You don't blame commercial fishermen. You don't blame sport fishermen. It's just overfishing. Think about the dramatic increase in sport fishing and spear fishing in the last 30 years. It's amazing.
Then also you think nothing to do with warm climate?
Well, you know, if it was climate change, wouldn't you see it in Cabo Pomo? And you don't. So climate change would have to jump over Cabo Pomo, and that's not the case. But the overfishing, yeah, there's certainly
overfishing and illegal fishing.
There would be a lot of people that would want to blame that it's all on the lack of vigilance and illegal fishing. Not true. It's just overfishing. There's too many people fishing too few resources on very small reef systems in the Sea of Cortez. You know, all your reef systems here are right off the edge of the cliff. They're rocky reefs along the edge of the landmass. That's where all the fish lived.
And also, there are right now a growing population in La Paz, for instance. No? A growing population. There are communities, there are business, and what would you tell them? Because there are more fishermen, there are more restaurants, and there are more tourist services for fishing, also for spear gun.
Yeah.
Sport.
So
it's a sport, but it's allowed. But also it's allowed the fish traps that are below that. There are how many of them, and they say they have permits and it's control, and they say there's harmony in the park, although it's only 1.4% protected. But they say that it's okay, and they are afraid.
Who's they?
I mean the community of some sport fishing companies, as well as some cooperatives maybe in the commercial fishing, and of course some of the people who sells suppliers for
yeah, they all know.
You know, a chain of
let me ask,
economical chain.
Let me ask you a question. In all your interviews with fishermen, when you're not on camera, and you talk about how are the fisheries, are they worse than they were before?
No,
do any of them tell you that it's good?
They say that every time it's less and less and less.
Yeah, and they've been saying that to you for 25 years that I know, right? So believe those fishermen. I mean, they don't want to talk about it on camera. I understand that, and the sport fishermen and the spear fishermen don't want, and the locals in La Paz don't want to give up what they've got, but they've already given up all the fish on the reefs. I mean, they're already gone. So really, the community needs to come together and talk about the fish are gone, yes. What do we do about it? Well, the only thing that's worked worldwide is to protect reef systems with no extraction marine protected areas. Now, I'm not here to say what should be protected and what shouldn't, but I think a great start would be to protect the reefs within the park. And then that's a recipe for what you do then in Loreto. Loreto's the same way. I mean, the park's in big trouble if you're looking at it underwater as a fisheries.
They claim that if they close all these fisheries, they could lose their investment, their business, and what they
no, listen, there isn't, and the sport fishermen will tell you the same. The sport fishermen don't make any money on the actual reefs themselves anyway. Yes, they make it off of it, but it's more on pelagic fish. It's more on Dorado, and well, the fish that are saved for sport fishing, the billfish, etc. But you got to leave the reefs alone. There has to be some place where a fish can feel safe and have a food supply so they reproduce. And there isn't any right now. There's no safe place except Cabo Pomo. Cabo Pomo is a worldwide success. It's not rocket science from there on. Do you think about it? But I understand, somebody's got get everybody together and at least agree to start with it. Yeah, the fisheries have dramatically declined. And more fishing is not going to solve that problem. So let's get busy and find out what we want to protect. The solution is easy. Just protect the reef systems that you want to start to recover.
We know that here in the Espiritu Santo there are only 3 nuclear points, like Islotes, is Punta Lobos, as well as San Gabriel, Bahia San Gabriel nearby.
And that's it. And the scientists have come down from California and had meetings with CONAMP, and all they say is you got to have bigger MPAs. 1.4% of the park being protected is no protection at all, and it's impossible to enforce vigilance at that point, right? Because if that rock over there you can fish on, and then a quarter that rock at the end of the bay you can't fish on, how does anybody provide vigilance for that? They don't. It's impossible, and certainly you can't use the eyes on the water approach where other fishermen and tourism can see that people are fishing illegally in a closed area when you can't really tell where that area is. And certainly 1.4%, won't do anything in terms of bringing the fish back.
Talking about because we cannot avoid the subject of generations. No, this generation is seeing less fish. But what happened with the next generations, 30, 34, 20 to 30 years, what is going to happen if they don't do anything? What is going to happen, really? What is the risk that they are leaving?
Listen, if you don't do anything tomorrow, you've got a big problem. I mean, it's that bad. So, yeah, and as you talk to people in the fish camps, they tell you that now our sons, they're not in the business anymore. So there's been a dramatic decline in the number of fishermen fishing, anyway, that's going to continue till there's no jobs for anybody. And believe me, I love Mexico. I love Mexican people. I see Cortez is the most beautiful place I've ever been in my life. I've spent my whole life here, and to see it die, I mean.
What do you do for a living? Because sometimes they say, well, maybe you have an economical interest. What would be the interest, the dark interest? They say
the dark interest. Yeah. Well, my only interest is to see this sea and some place in the sea recover other than Cabo Pomo before I die. And I don't have that many. I'm 84 years old. I don't have that many years left to be here. But I swear I'm going to stay alive long enough to see another recovery other than Cabo Pomo. Cabo Pomo's recovery started 29 years ago, and there hasn't been one other place in the Sea of Cortez that's had a significant or even a recovery. So, you know.
What the people should listen, I mean, to the scientists, to the fishermen, to the yachters that are coming here, but they are, you know, they enjoy the environment. They don't know what's happening in the world.
Underwater. Yeah, and La Paz, you know, I wouldn't want to look at this from an economic point of view because there's more tourism in La Paz than there was, but it's Cabo San Lucas tourism. It's 20 people in a boat or 15 people in a boat making a tour around the island and stopping for a lunch for half an hour and snorkeling and then going back in. So in spite of the fact that there's nothing left underwater, your tourism will stay here until a better place is found. And well, look at Cabo Pulmo. I mean, it's a huge success. I mean, you know, they've got to constantly stop the excess of people wanting to dive there, and that's all business that could be coming to La Paz and isn't. So I guess I wouldn't want to say that the economic model that La Paz has right now won't work for a while longer. But in the end, you got to have a healthy sea. I mean, just innately, you know that an unhealthy sea is a prelude to the end of mankind. That's how I look at it. We came from the sea, and if the sea dies, we die.
Yeah. I don't know if there's something that I haven't asked that you'd like to comment, or something that and what you'd like to add.
I'd just like to ask the people of Mexico, the people of La Paz in particular, to start the second recovery right here in Espiritu Santo National Park. Yeah, it's all the old guys from the old days and all the fishing camps and people like me, you know, makes us want to cry. And their stories are exactly like mine. What used to be, this used to be, the aquarium of the world. Now it's the upcoming Mediterranean of the world.
Well, my McGettigan, thank you very much, and we hopefully we have you here for many years more, why not? But because things are working, and I think people has to awake and realize that that if they don't do anything today, tomorrow will be maybe too late.
Yeah, it can be too late, but again, thank God there was a Cabo Pulmo to give all of us a chance to see that the ocean could recover, and yes, we do need more Cabo Pulmo-like recoveries, and that's going to provide fish from spillover effect, etc., for the fishermen, and of course there's going to be no fish for anybody.
And should be an integrated effort, no? Because they have to be involved, the education, you know, the children and the young people in the schools and the students, mainly in places where they are by the sea, in the littoral. They need to realize the treasure that we have, and as I have said many times, no, you don't care what you don't know. I mean, the knowledge of your surroundings are basic to understand what you can lose if you don't act immediately, even with the kids and the young people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what you think about that.
I think time's run out. Either you do something now, or it's going to be too late. And you know, it's just a sideline. But fishing pressure is one thing, and just my own thoughts. The reason that you don't see pelagics back in the Sea of Cortez, tuna haven't been up in the Sea of Cortez in 10 years. There've been a few out at Cerralvo and outside, but back up at Santa Cruz and those islands, you don't see the tuna schools anymore.